Ilan ba ang humihingi ngayon ng saklolo pagdating dito sa usapin ng krisis sa Middle East? Ilan ba ang nandiyan at ilan ang ina-address na natin dyan or ongoing? May numero ho ba tayo dyan?
Meron po tayong numero, Mr. Chair, but having said that, live count, very fluid po ang sitwasyon. So for instance, we have around 2,200 awaiting repatriation. But that number is a live count. Habang nakikita ng mga kababayan natin, yung efforts natin ng repatriation, dumadagdag at dumadagdag po ito. When it comes to financial assistance, we're working on around 3,500 applications more for financial assistance. But again, this is also a live count because as the days unfold, mas nararamdaman ho natin, should I say, yung pinch in terms of yung mga humihinang mga negosyo, mga nagre-reduce ng working hours, and yung mga nagsasabing mga employers na, o sige, mag-leave muna kayo, pause muna tayo. So this is not a definite count, but what we're trying to do right now is to project. So that in terms of projections po natin, kung titignan natin yung COVID experience, higit kumulang yung nangailangan ng financial assistance po doon ay mga 500,000 nung binabigyan sa COVID, but this was in a span of 2-3 years. So tayo, we could project in terms of kung sino yung posibleng mga ilangan ngayong taon na ito at kung sino yung posibleng mga ilangan in 2 to 3 years. So I would say mga 200,000 kung magpapatuloy po ito na financial assistance na maaari natin bigay all throughout the year. As the year progresses and we know more about those who will need the assistance. So all told, pasensya na Mr. Chair, hindi po definite ang figures because a lot of
Sec,
this will depend on how the conflict will continue or will
si,
perhaps cease.
just to, not to cut you off, but Sec, siguro categorically na lang, as far as we are concerned, as people who are taking care of our respective districts, masasabi ba ninyo categorically na as far as DMW is concerned, kapag may humingi ng saklolo, particularly on repatriation, nagagawa natin ang paraan? Kasi may naririnig kami na may malawakang sigaw ng napakaraming tao na napag-iiwanan na tila nandun sa kadiliman, hindi nila alam. So we want a categorical declaration from the DMW that is it correct that as far as the department is concerned, kung may nangangailangan, nandiyan kayo, tutulungan sila?
Precisely, Mr. Chair. The categorical answer is yes. There are continuing flights, commercial and charter flight bookings
Okay, sige,
all throughout the Holy Week and this coming weekend.
maraming salamat. Meron din tayong dalawang ang PNOC at saka NAPOCOR, pero mamaya tawagin na lang namin kayo. Buksan muna natin sa pagtatanong at the appropriate time sa ating mga dating kasama, no? Particularly si Congressman Coco Nograles. At this point, I'd like to call our Deputy Minority Leader. Tinatawagan natin si Congressman Tonchi Tino. Paalala ko lang po, mga kapatid, pag umabot po na 5 minuto, may maririnig kayong tunog. So I'd like to ask you to wrap up once you hear that sound. Go ahead, Tonchi.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, merong PowerPoint lang para makatulong sa pagtatanong. Ready na po ba?
Secretariat, pwede bang paki-play yung kay Tonchi Tino? Go ahead.
Okay, so, Mr. Chair, alam natin, global ang crisis at nagtaas ang presyo ng gasolina, diesel, etc. sa buong mundo. Pero ang dapat po malaman ng mga kababayan natin ay ang pagtaas sa Pilipinas ay kabilang sa pinakamalaki na pagtaas sa buong daigdig. Top 2 pinakamahal na gas sa buong mundo in terms of rate of increase, no, 71.6, and top 3 na pinakamahal sa buong mundo o pinakamalaking pagtaas in terms of diesel sa buong mundo po, no. Next slide. So ito visualization, this is cited by an international news agency, so vetted naman po yung information. pinakamataas po sa gasolina yung rate ng increase in the past month, no, during this crisis. Myanmar, tapos 100% ang increase. Ang Pilipinas ay more than 70, something like 77%. Next slide. So, ayan po, no, so among the countries, gasoline prices 71.6% ang tinaas mula Pebrero 23 in a one-month period sa panahon ng krisis. At ganon din sa diesel, kung makita yung next slide. 111% ang rate of increase mula February 23. Pwede po bang, sa buong mundo po to, again, no? So pwede po bang ma-explain sa mamamayan ng DOE bakit ganon? No? Bakit sa dinami-dami ng mga bansa sa buong daigdig na apektado nito, pinakamataas yung sa Pilipinas o kasama sa pinakamataas yung pagtaas. Bakit po ganun?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Secretary
Yes,
Sharon,
Mr.
please.
Chair. Actually, we are the highest in the percentage of increase, but we are not the highest in price.
I said that.
We're actually one of the in the middle sa price compared to the rest of the world. We are just the most vulnerable in terms of like what's happening now. Yung response niya, tayo yung pinakamataas na akyat. I'll explain na lang, Mr. Chair, how do companies derive their prices. No? About 94% of that price is on the cost of goods. Which means not only how much the barrel is, the premium, ang premium po dati $5 yan, ngayon naging $60. Freight and insurance are way much higher. So nag-increase na po lahat niya yan. And that composes, and all the transport and everything else, it's 94%. Our taxes, depends kasi sa presyo ng cost of goods, but there's excise tax of 6 pesos is on diesel and VAT effective around 11% of that. So that's 94% yung landed cost niya, tapos add mo yung VAT, and then you have to add the cost ng biofuel, which is about 3%. Tapos yun po yung natitira yung kita nila. There are varying reports on how much they earn from this, Mr. Chair. It can go from, this time, could go from negative up to 10%, Mr. Chair. Yun yung structure niya. And we have confirmed this actually, Mr. Chair, when PNOC started buying. And true enough, lahat po to na presyo ng cost of goods are confirmed kasi yun din yung binabayaran ng PNOC. So, why are we highest in responding? I think it's our oil structure also of our industry. Kasi fully liberalized siya eh. And we don't have any buffers. We tax it. We don't have any buffers as into price control. Wala tayong oil stabilization fund, unlike the other countries that are less vulnerable. Meron silang subsidy on their pump price, and they have their own source of oil, and also they have their own bigger refineries. We only have one as of today, sir. Only 30% yan galing sa refinery. So the structure of our oil industry is really very vulnerable to such events like this, Mr. Chair.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. Nabanggit niyo yung liberalized, pero hindi niyo nabanggit yung salita, deregulated. Tama po. So, essentially, yan ang ibig sabihin ng deregulation. Nasabi niyo rin, yung ibang mga bansa kasi, may protection sa consumer. Sabi, may mga subsidies kahit papano. Sa atin, wala. Diretsong pinapasa sa consumer yung pagtaas. Kaya po, kasama tayo sa pinakamabilis na tumaas. Okay. Yun po ang nakikita natin ngayon. Ito ang ibig sabihin ng deregulation. Ngayon, ang concern po natin ay, at ito na yung pagtingin ng marami, yung sapi ng overpricing. Again, doon sa slide po, ang DOE po naglalabas ng parang 3 times a month yung inyong oil monitor. Di po ba? At doon, nandun yung global price, Tapos meron kayong domestic prices for gasoline, diesel, kerosene, may isa pa.
Kerosene.
LPG. Okay. No, actually, I think it's just 3. At tinignan namin po yung over a 6-month period yung inyong oil monitor. Pero napansin namin, for the month of February, isa lang ang nilabas nyo. So wala po yung 2 weeks, yung crucial 2 weeks leading up to the war. Bakit po ganon? So baka pwedeng ilabas nyo. Ba't nga po ba hindi kayo naglabas?
Mr. Chair, every week we actually do advisory. Baka walang changes at that time. I have to check that,
Okay.
Mr. Chair. But it's a regular activity we have every week.
Yun nga, missing po ng dalawa. Tinignan po namin yung past 6 months. So 18 reports po yon, kulang ng dalawa. Anyway, sa slide po. So ang exercise lang dito, yung world prices na binanggit nyo, tapos tinrack natin against yung domestic prices. Ano po ang findings natin? Kung pwede po makita yung slide. Pero kung hindi, essentially, ganito po ang nakita natin.
Ilabas natin yung slide. Hinto nyo muna yung oras ni
Thank you po.
Congressman Tino.
Ayan, okay.
Ayan, sige.
Sige. So, essentially, gano'n, no? Kinumpare natin yung batay sa mga datos nyo, meron pang slides dyan Pwede bang makita? Yan muna. Okay. So, yung pula, yung blue, yun po yung world price. Adjusted yan, no? Para maging comparable sila. And then yung pula, yun po yung domestic price. So, ideally, dapat sumusunod yung pula sa blue. No? Pero nakita natin consistently, mas mataas yung pula kaysa sa blue. Tapos, especially during the panahon ng gera, nakita natin na kahit bumaba yung presyo ng gasolina, ay nanatiling mataas yung presyo ng domestic. Okay, so this is for gasoline. Sorry, this is for diesel. We did that also for gasoline and kerosene. Yun yung available na data provided by the DOE. Anyway, so ang conclusion natin from this, over 18 reports, 6 months, ay meron talagang overpricing. Kahit even before the crisis, meron ng lagpas na pag-charge. No? Average of 1.34 pesos per liter for gasoline, 1 pesos 90 centavos per liter diesel, and 1.79 for kerosene. No? At may mga minsan may mga spikes yan malalaki. No? But anyway, so yun ang punto natin. Consistently overpriced po compared to the world market price. No? Kaya nga sabi ng Ibon, meron silang sabi 46.5 billion daw ang windfall profit ng oil companies for the month of March. No? Ano pong ginagawa ng gobyerno rito?
Pwede ba nating sagutin yon para makapagtanong
Yes, sir.
ka pa dun sa iba? Can you address that? I
Yes.
think it's a very valid
Yes, Mr. Chair.
question.
So, before, bibili ka ng, we base it on the international price, no? Tapos, babayad ka ng premium, insurance, transportation. Premium used to be about $5 per barrel. Insurance, the normal insurance, transportation. So, ngayon po, pag nakita nyo po, dapat ganun yung trend, no? It stays steady at $5 premium insurance, kasi kaya sumusunod siya on the first part of the table of the graph of Congressman Tino. Now ngayon, umiba siya. Became erratic. Umaakyat yung presyo ng per barrel, pero yung premium times 10 na siya. About $50 to $60 per barrel. So, hindi na reflective yung per barrel price ng crude oil or yung MOPS natin. Ang mga additional cost, umakyat din. Nakita rin namin to sa PNOC order. Ang insurance ng freight umakyat din. So umakyat lahat ng mga collaterals niya plus the barrel itself. So hindi lang yung barrel umakyat kundi pati yung premium. Mr.
Anong
Chair.
paliwanag doon? Ba't tumataas ang premium? Insurance, malinaw yun kasi mas tumataas yung cost, di ba? So nakapeg naman yun doon, naka-index doon. Pero bakit tumataas ang premium? Is it the volatility? Is it the excess demand, lack of supply?
Basically, the ones who want oil are price takers, Mr. Chair. Pinag-aagawan siya, especially from the start. Nobody wanted to sell. And if you're willing to buy at a premium, then you can buy. But if you're not, then you cannot buy. So we are at the mercy of the traders, no, or the international trading nila. Kaya ganun po, nagpeg sila 50 to 60. And why did we not have supply at the start? Or there was a scary moment at that time. Kasi po ayaw magbayad sana ng ating mga oil companies ng premium because they thought na hindi papayagan ng gobyerno. And then that's why PNOC had to get in and pay the premium for their orders.
Congressman Tino, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Let me just note, Mr. Okay, ang explanation daw premium. Pero let me just point out na even before the crisis, up to previous 6 months, no, ay mas mataas pa rin consistently. So ang sinasabi natin, may overpricing pa rin compared dun sa movement nung global price o world price. Okay. And ngayon,
Mr. Chair, gusto ko lang i-address ni Secretary Garin yung tanong ni Congressman Tino. Do you agree with Congressman Tino na may overpricing?
No, Mr. Chair.
no. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Go
Oh,
ahead, Congressman Tino.
O malinaw po 'yon. Tingin ng DOE walang overpricing, sinasabi natin meron. Let me just point out.
Please wrap up.
Okay,
Go
yung sa
ahead.
pinang-unbundling, Mr. Chair, the DOE publishes on its website, merong parang breakdown no, ng mga prices. So, the breakdown consists of common price per liter, import cost, taxes, biofuel, and industry take. So, yung industry take consists of port charges, refining cost, storage cost, handling cost, marketing cost, transshipment cost, other costs, and oil company profit margin. No? Pero hindi dinidisclose ito ng DOE. Ang sinasite nila ay trade secrets, no? Confidential information. However, sabi ng Supreme Court, in a decision on this, sabi niya, it is clear that it recognizes that there are certain pieces of information to be collected from the oil companies that are confidential in character, which the DOE is not permitted to share to unauthorized third persons or the public, but it is only when there are portions thereof that are matters of public interest is the DOE Secretary allowed under Republic Act number 8479 to make such known to the public. So, kinikilala po ng jurisprudence na may mga pagkakataon na pwedeng i-share sa publiko ang mga impormasyon na ito in the name of public interest. Sabi pa nga rito, after all, the law for the deregulation of the downstream oil industry was not created to protect these oil companies. No, it is for the sake and benefit of the public. So ang point po, hindi po ba ngayon ay pwedeng tungtungan na ito ng DOE para ibahagi sa publiko yung mga banggit natin na breakdown ng so-called industry take, which ranges from 21% for diesel up to 29% for gasoline. No? So napakalaki po ng industry take na yon. No?
May
yun po,
we
Mr.
hear
Chair.
the position of
Yes,
the
Yung-
Secretary?
in other words, ang tinutulak po natin ay ilabas,
Transparency.
ilahad sa
Oo.
publiko yung pricing, lalo na sa panahon ngayon.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we actually have also more knowledge now of the prices because of PNOC's purchases. And our estimate is about 2 to 10% ang industry intake. But having said that, though, yes, there was a ruling and we were stopped from the unbundling. And because of the EO, we have issued an order to to the companies to submit their unbundled prices already, Mr. Chair. We're waiting for the consolidation.
So
of that.
tama ba ang reading ko sa sagot ninyo relative dun sa question ni Congressman Tino is that the Secretary of the Department of Energy is moving towards the full disclosure of items that need to be made transparent to the public?
We have asked them for the info and unbundling, Mr. Chair, na. Just to qualify that, what is going to be public and not public, that will depend on the provisions of the law, Mr. Chair. But the trigger of this power was the issuance of the EO of the President, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, malinaw na sa jurisprudence na sinasabi, yes, confidential yan, pero pwedeng i-disclose ng Secretary for public interest. And very clearly, ngayong panahon na national energy emergency, kailangan makita po ng publiko. Ano po yung sinisingil? No? So, hindi po, ang sinasabi lang ng Secretary, hiningi nila yung information. Wala silang sinasabi na i-disclose nila sa publiko. So, I think yung committee po ay kailangan pong pumosisyon na meron naman pong legal basis para i-disclose ito ngayon. Para malaman po kung ano pa talaga yung usapin ng overpricing, no?
The point is well taken. We will await the action on the part of the Secretary of Energy. I think that's a very important point raised by the Honorable Tino. Maraming salamat. May we now call from the call on the majority, the Honorable Brian Revilla. You have the floor, sir.
Maraming salamat po, Mr. Chair. Just a few questions po. Sa DMW, I just want to ask, tungkol po sa mga na-repatriate po natin ng mga kababayan. Tulad na mention niyo po kanina na-identify niyo po kung ano po yung mga skill sets na meron po sila at hinahanapan po ng trabaho yung mga kababayan na na-repatriate po natin. I just want to ask the status po kung ano po yung turnaround rate po ng mga kababayan natin na bumalik po dito at nabigyan na po ng trabaho o na job placement po sa mga ibang bansa po or dito po sa ating bansa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes po, yung turnaround rate natin usually will, as mentioned in the process flow, will take about a month. Assuming po na smooth yung processing nung, let's say, employment application, kasi syempre meron pa ho yung consideration or processing ng employer. The employer is not in the Philippines, obviously, so meron pa ho yung processing from out of the country. But in general, I would say yung nakita ho natin sa process flow, ang turnaround time niyan will be around 30 days. That's the period in which the person will definitely know whether tuloy siya sa trabaho niya o hindi. At ang gagawin naman po natin dito, lalatagan natin yung worker ng mga samot-saring options. Nung kinausap namin ng mga recruitment agencies, ang sabi namin, at least top 3 choices ng worker. And then we will farm out the top 3 choices para at least simultaneous ang process. So short answer is mga 1 month, Mr. Chair, for the OFW to know kung ano ang resulta ng kanyang job application, most especially kung tanggap siya. Kung hindi siya tanggap, mabilis po nating malalaman yon. But ang presumption ko dun sa 1 month is yung ma-firm up yung kanyang tanggap siya at ma-process yung kanyang documentation.
Thank you, sir.
For the record, Congressman Revilla is the chairman of the Committee on Overseas Workers Affairs.
Thank you,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Another question, sir. Naintindihan po natin na magulo po ang sitwasyon ngayon sa kaibaang dagat. Gusto ko po malaman ano po ang status ng ating mga seafarers po sa bandang Strait of Hormuz. Meron po ba tayong contact po sa ating mga kababayan doon at may tulong po ba tayong na ipapadala sa kanila?
Ang naging system po natin, since day 1, may monitoring na ho tayo, may electronic monitoring system tayo whereby the manning agencies electronically report to us and it's sent to a central database. Meron tayong situation room sa DMW. So every day, we are briefed on their situation. And then periodic din po yung meetings natin. Once or twice a week, we meet with the licensed manning agencies, including the foreign ship owners groups abroad. Meron hong committee na itinalaga nung panahon pa ni Sec. Toots Ople at buhay pa rin ho yung committee na yon with the foreign ship owners. So, meron tayong monitoring. Essentially, ang ang ating minomonitor yung welfare and well-being nila, which is in two parts. One is yung food and water and supplies on board. So we make sure na all the ships, all the seafarers have adequate water supplies. In general, ang sagot ng mga manning agencies, they're good for 30 to 45 days water supply before they purchase from suppliers along the Saudi coastline or Qatari coastline or UAE coastline. At sabi namin, meron silang ulat na tumataas-taas daw yung presyo ng mga water food supplies, but they assured us, regardless of the pricing ng mga tubig o pagkaing binibili nila, they will supply all their ships and have so supplied all their ships. The second thing we are monitoring is contractual entitlements. Dapat ho tuloy-tuloy ang pagbayad, yung allotments sa mga pamilya dito sa Pilipinas. So, bagamat hindi po magandang balita na sila'y nasa Persian Gulf at hindi makalabas, ang isa pa ang katumbas nun is all the reported seafarers along the Persian Gulf continue to receive their salaries and their families as well, with the 85% allotment requirement. Their families still continue to receive their salaries.
Speaking of salaries, sir, is there a delay of salaries for our OFWs in affected areas?
Admittedly, yes, Mr. Chair, kaya nga po meron tayong financial assistance na binibigay, including food packs that we deliver. Meron na po dun sa mga sektor na mostly hospitality. Ako po yung nanggaling sa nakadalawang balik na po ako sa UAE, and in both visits, kitang-kita ko po na medyo bumababa talaga ang occupancy rate. Sa mga hotels, and even the restaurants are not as filled up. But having said that, merong mga efforts, of course, ang na-meet ko rin ng UAE Labor Minister at sinasalaysay niya sa akin yung continuing efforts nila to boost their own labor market. And he still continues to be optimistic na kakayanin po ng kanilang ministry to support the businesses, so that the workers in turn will be supported. So, pero meron po talaga work reduction, work disruption, merong mga nabawasan ng working hours. Kaya ito po, sila po yung tinutulungan natin. Pag airports ang pinag-uusapan, alam nating sarado ang Kuwait Airport, Bahrain Airport. So, sinusuportahan din po natin yung mga airport workers na nawalan ng trabaho. But rest assured, ang isang maganda palang balita sa mga airport workers, meron silang support din na nakukuha from their respective employers sa airport authorities. So, many of them, in fact, have accommodations. At doon sila nakatira sa mga accommodations. But having said that, precarious pa rin ang sitwasyon, kaya tayo nagbibigay rin ng sarili nating financial assistance at food assistance.
Yeah, another question po. Ilan pong, alam ko po na nabawasan po ang pag-deploy po natin ng mga kababayan natin sa Middle East. Gaano po kalaki po yung nabawas po sa ating mga Pilipino na nababayahe po ng Middle East?
Ayon sa talaan natin, for this year, 50% ang nakikita nating malaking bawas. And you're looking at, for instance, UAE with around nearly 400,000 workers deployed in 2025. Then you're looking at least half of them thus far. Yan po ang trend. Having said that, yun nga po, isang purpose ng pagdalaw ko at maganda yung pakikipag-usap ko sa UAE Labor Minister, that he was very assuring in a sense that meron silang sarili nilang labor market support programs na nakasalang.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Before I wrap up, I just have two more questions in regards to the Action Fund and the ERF of OWA. I just want to ask the status po, kamusta po yung utilization rate nyo dito po sa Action Fund and sa ERF?
You gave us, with approval of the President, of course, 2 billion pesos for 2026. Obviously, we did not foresee the last 45 days. So ngayon po, we have obligated 1.2 billion at Sec Rolly gave me the wonderful news before this hearing na yung forthcoming na rin yung 800 million na balance. Ibig sabihin po, by April, ubus na po. But having said that, the President in our cabinet meetings has always instructed myself and Sec Rolly, and including ES Ralph, to sit down and work on the numbers. Malinaw po kay Presidente na kailangan suportahan ang ating action fund. So we're working on supplementing and adding on to what we currently have from other fund sources.
For OWA, what's the status of your ERF?
Mr. Chair, magandang umaga po. On the part of the Emergency Repatriation Fund, which is the fund established in accordance with Republic Act 8042 or the Migrant Workers Act, particular para po ma-address yung mga concerns pong meron tayo ngayon, we were given under the GAA 1.2 billion pesos. ERF continuing is around 474 million. So a total of 1.7 billion. We have utilized and obligated already 48%, and we have a remaining balance of 922 million pesos, Mr. Chair.
Before you proceed, can you just state, Administrator, your whole name for the record, so for our stenographers?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I am Patricia Yvonne M. Kaunan, Administrator of the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration.
Go ahead, Congressman Revilla.
This 48% usually compared to last year, magkano yung utilization rate nyo last year na walang conflict? compared
Around
to
this
now?
time, Mr. Chair, I would, as far as our review, around 25 to around 28% would be our utilization rate at this point. Now we are at 48%, and as mentioned by our secretary, we are expecting utilization, heavy utilization this coming month, few weeks. Ngayon po, Mr. Chair, meron na po tayong ongoing repatriation efforts, so we are incurring costs as we speak, Mr. Chair.
You are spending per repatriate how much?
Mr. Chair, it has, we reported to the committee the cost of the repatriation at the time when wala pong available na commercial flights. At that time po, umakyat po yung flight, yung flight to Manila through charter, baka around 100 to 130,000. Pero ngayon po na meron na pong mga commercial flights, nakakakuha po kami ng DMW ng around 50 to 75,000 pesos per flight. So, kung idadagdag pa po yung iba po pong expenses, for example, yung ating pong mga land transportation, dahil po, as mentioned by our secretary, tinatawid po natin ang ating mga OFWs from Bahrain, from Kuwait, from Qatar. From Kuwait po, papuntang Dammam, mga 3 hanggang 5 oras, depende pa po sa mga proseso sa mga borders. So kung isusuman niyo po lahat, sama na po dyan ang reintegration, financial assistance, at ang financial assistance na binibigay ng DMW at OWA, nasa around pong 120 to 130,000. Bumaba na po ito compared before. At dito po sa amount na 120,000, ang ticket po dyan nasa 50 to 70,000 pesos po.
Thank you. We have to really protect our OFWs, as we all know that the OFWs are our backbone for this economy. In 2025, the remittances totaled at least to 35 billion US dollars. And kung sana po with our members dito po sa committee na to, na sana suportahan po natin ang mga OFWs natin, lalo-lalo na po ang DMW at OWA, na madagdagan po ang kanilang action fund at ang ERF nila para po sa mga kapakanan po at safety ng ating mga OFWs. So lang po, Mr. Chair, maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat, Congressman Revilla. Sige, Secretary Kakdak, briefly, no? At siguro kabahagi na rin doon is one of the outputs that are really needed here sa amin is ano ba yung kinakailangan na dagdag na pondo considering the projected OFWs that you need to be able to repatriate. Yun ang hinahanap namin dito, no? Yung kung ano yung mga kinakailangan or laundry list na kinakailangan ninyo para ma-address natin specifically yung short-term issues as well as yung long-term issues even sa usapin ng policy. Secretary Kakdak, go ahead.
Yes, I could sum it up at this stage in terms of 7.3 billion, which will be broken down into financial assistance of around 5 billion pesos. So that's good for around 400,000 OFWs potentially. With chartered flights, yung nabanggit po kanina are commercial flights. But the advantage of chartering is we could bring in more people, let's say in a 2-week span, that otherwise we will bring home through commercial flight seat bookings in 1.5 months. So kung gusto ho natin mas mabilis na pagpapauwi, chartering is an option. Commercial din po is always an option, lalo na kung cost efficient siya. Pero kung mas gusto natin mas mabilis makauwi ang mga kababayan natin, chartering would be faster by about a month in terms of bringing more people home. So all told, it's around 7.3 billion, Mr. Chair, 5 billion for financial assistance, 1 billion for chartering and other commercial flights, and the rest would be costing with respect to food and transport and medical assistance.
We'd like to get that in writing, no? Yung kung anong kinakailangan natin so that the committee can act on it appropriately. So maraming salamat. Before we call on our independent member, we'd like to call on one more member of the majority. We'd like to now recognize the Honorable Representative Alfredo Pido Garvin of Ako Bicol. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me start my manifestation with a manifestation, Mr. Chair. The supply security is necessary, but it is not equate with a price justice. DIPALA's own position is that safe passage through Hormuz ensures deliveries but not lower the prices. This committee, Mr. Chair, must examine not only whether fuel will arrive, but whether the Filipino public is being charged fairly, transparently, and only to the extent of truly justified by actual market condition. Now, my question will be answered by the Department of Finance, Yusek Carlo.
Yusek Adriano, go ahead with your question, please.
Naghahang lang. Sorry.
Please proceed, Congressman Garvin. Go ahead.
Now, to the Department of Finance, Mr. Chair, since diesel is the inflation transmitter because apektado nito yung freightage cost, yung pagkain, yung pangingisda, pati na yung public transport, power generation. Yesterday, the diesel increased to almost 20 pesos per liter. And therefore, it is not just the transport sector, it is also the food price, the logistics, and household cost issue. To the Department of Finance, what is your current estimate of the inflation impact if the diesel remains at the current elevated levels for the next 30, 60, or 90 days?
Mr. Chair, with regards to the projection on inflation, I will defer to BSP on this. I believe they have several estimates on this.
Yeah, please go ahead. Who is from BSP? I saw Zino Abinuha, my classmate. But in his stead, is he here?
Mr. Chair, he's
With-
just outside the room. But,
Yeah, with deference, just with the indulgence of Congressman Pido, I think they were sort of not expecting it because the DOF as well as DBM and the DBCC are meant for this afternoon. But since the question has been raised, can we just answer it in a concise manner? We can have a more deliberative explanation later.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just would like to address that question.
Sir,
very
may
briefly.
you kindly state your...
I'm Mr. Dennis Bautista po, from the Department of Economic Research. I believe that there will be a presentation in more detail later on in the afternoon. But to just briefly answer that question, our latest inflation forecast is 5.1% on average for 2026 and 3.8% for 2027. This was significantly higher from the previous forecast that we had, which was 3.6% for 2026 and 3.2% for 2027. And the details of which will be presented later on by the Deputy Governor.
With that targeted or expected inflation, Mr. Chair, is the DOF or the BSP recommending any tax relief or any targeted subsidies or a windfall type measure or an extraordinary downstream gains during this geopolitical emergency?
Mr. Chair, with regards to
Excuse me, out of deference because of the seniority in terms of age of Congressman Pido Garbin, I will allow you to answer, no? But later on, we will reserve all issues or questions pertaining to our DBCC personalities for this afternoon. But please go ahead, Yusek Adriano.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. With regards to the recommendation on the excise tax on fuel, the suspension or reduction, the DBCC already met and already presented its recommendation to the President. With regards to targeted subsidies, I believe the national government has been doing that, and we will be continuously assessing if we need to actually provide more targeted subsidies.
Can you repeat that, Yusek? Hindi ko nakuha. At kumbaga, I know this is a policy sensitive, Yusek, Carlo, but we need a credible answer, at least discuss ano ba yung fiscal space natin and trade-off dito sa mga tinatanong ko.
Mr. Chair, with regards to the expenditure side, I believe the DBM already identified around 230 billion in the current GAA that can be used to address the impact of the rising prices of fuel. Now, with regards to the suspension or reduction of excise taxes, I cannot discuss it yet because it's still subject for approval of the President. But we will be presenting, I think by law, we will be presenting the revenue estimates or losses given the recommendation on the reduction or suspension of excise taxes.
Mr. Chair, if the country secures a fuel supply but not lower prices, what is the fiscal plan to cushion the transport, the food logistics, the fisheries, and the agriculture?
Can the Department of Budget answer that, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As mentioned by Yusek Carlo here, we've already identified funding for us to for these.
Excuse me, can we ask everyone to please be quiet and listen to the resource person? This is a serious matter. Go ahead, Secretary.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, as far as our response in terms of this crisis that we are experiencing right now, we have identified around 238 billion from our available appropriations, which is from the 2026 GEA and from the continuing appropriations. Okay. Based on our consolidation, we have identified various programs and projects that are now being implemented by the different departments and agencies in response to this crisis. Specifically, for our transport sector, we have already released the funding for for the 2.5 billion for the transport sector plus yung 1 billion for service contracting. Now, for the mga ayuda that we are already releasing, we have already released funding for, especially for the AICs, in support for those affected vulnerables. Comprehensive release po yan in terms of allotment, but in terms of cash, we still need to, of course, available requests from the department themselves. So, so far, Mr. Chair, our support for other, just like mentioned earlier from the DMW, we have already released for those, for the repatriation program, as far as the DMW and for the OWA. And there are still a lot of programs and projects that goes to be top. For example, from the DOLE, the TUPAD program that we can also top as in response to this crisis, and also for other sectors, like for example the Department of Health for their MAIFIF, and the Department of Agriculture. We have already released the presidential assistance to fisher folks and farmers. That is around 10 billion pesos, Mr. Chair. So those are some of the programs and projects, but within the General Appropriations Acts for 2026 and 2025 continuing appropriation, Mr. Chair.
So we expect a targeted subsidy and not a universal subsidy.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I think that's a prudent way of giving subsidy or ayuda that we have to target really for those specifically vulnerable sector, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And one question for the Department of Energy, Secretary Garin. So, what emergency legislative amendments does the DOE now recommend, considering that do you recommend the inventory disclosure, the anti-profiteering triggers, or the temporary suspension of the excise or the VAT adjustment that is targeted support for the diesel? Madam Secretary.
Mr. Chair, one is probably the most crucial legislation is the amendment of the oil deregulation law. It has several topics there, but maybe deregulation works when there's no war, when it's a normal times. But when there's a war and the spike is so high, it's unpredictable. This is not that the price is determined by supply. There's the natural and artificial causes here na tumataas lang talaga siya. And when this happens, as pointed out by Congressman Tino, we're so vulnerable because it gets reflected right away, ano? And then on the other hand, DOE cannot stop this. We can monitor, we can watch it, we can reprimand, but we don't have the powers to control it before it happens, Mr. Chair. So a certain degree of regulation when it is needed, I think it is necessary. And that's one for the oil deregulation, and many others, the unbundling, the powers of the DOE. I'm not sure if excise tax is my topic, but that would be the topic of. But that's about 20% of the cost of the pump price, yung VAT and the excise.
So you mentioned about revisiting the Oil Deregulation Act. And I agree with you that the DOE right now don't have the power to cap the price. what legal powers does DOE already have today, short of the price control, to compel disclosure of inventories, validate landed costs, inspect price notices, and sanction non-compliance, Madam Secretary? Because I believe that the DOE has this monitoring and can impose compliance functions, and that can also intensify its fuel station monitoring.
Yes, we do that, Mr. Chair. But as to regulating the price, telling them what price they should charge, or tell them to lower their price, we can only do that based on other laws, Mr. Chair, not on order. Maybe on profiteering, on the DTI powers, hoarding, a criminal case, but not exactly a violation of any DOE-related laws, Mr. Chair. Can I add just one
Yes, please
suggestion
proceed.
also? Maybe also the House can consider our vulnerability is also because we don't have our own reserves, and added to the fact that we only have one refinery, and that's only 30% of our demand. So I think maybe in the lines of, I don't know if it's necessary that we need a law for this, but a budget for this so that it can be done, Mr. Chair.
And
Yeah, go ahead.
last question, Mr.
No,
Chair.
no, just on that point.
Yes, please.
I think Secretary Sharon, that's one of the things that we want emanating from you, because we cannot be smarter than the executive insofar as this particular issue is concerned. We have a number of House bills that have been filed pertaining to having a petroleum security, meaning having a national reserve for petroleum. So we'd like to hear a concrete proposal coming from the executive as to the amount of the volume, as well as what is the needed infrastructure to be able to do that. That's also one of the inputs that the speaker really wants, so that we have a clear idea, because obviously this is something that is obviously needed based on our recent experience.
Mr. Chair, just for a ballpark, we're preparing that. We're doing the papers now on how much it will cost and what are the infrastructure. But just to have an idea, we recently have 20 billion. We took was given by the DBM now, as ordered by the president. 20 billion is, but 1 million barrels is 12 billion pesos already. And that's 12 billion pesos is only good for 5 days. So ganun kalaki yung, as of today's prices though, no? Ganun kalaki yung requirement. So that's why it's also, and then even if we buy more, we don't have the facilities to store. So those are, we're preparing that para we can present it also in Congress. But we're still doing the feasibility and all the evaluation, Mr. Chair.
May we know that 15 billion? Did you say you spent 15 billion?
12 billion so far,
12
Mr.
billion
Chair.
to acquire the 2 million liters? Tama?
1 million pa lang, Mr. Chair.
What is the nature of that appropriation?
This is emergency funding that we got from DBM.
May we ask from DBM? Because the chairman of the Committee on Appropriation has been asking me what is the PAP that he has emanated from.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. This is a special account in the general fund. This is an automatic appropriation. Ang source fund nito is the from Malampaya Gas Fund, the 20 billion, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. We will have questions about that later. Congressman Garbin, please wrap up kindly.
Last question, Mr. Chair. Ito yung palaging tanong kahit ng aking mga constituents sa Bicol. In plain terms, Madam Secretary, why consumers are paying prices for a fuel that is already in storage? Is the Department of Energy affirming that the market uses a replacement accounting cost rather than a historic acquisition cost?
Yes, Mr. Chair. They're doing the replacement cost. Replacement cost, basically, pag nagbenta ka ngayon ng for 100 pesos, and then you sell it today, and then what you sell you have to replace. So ang presyo ngayon yung accounting nila para makabili sila ng replenishment for next. Kasi pag halimbawa 100 pesos yung cost na, pero yung papasingil mo lang sa kanila 50, kalahati lang ng kailangan ng bansa yung bibili nila, because that's how it goes, the replacement cost, and so many other technical explanation. Pero yun yung accounting na ginagamit ng industry ever since. Well, since I started, and I think my former boss started, it's always been a replacement cost, Mr. Chair.
So paano po pag like for example, with the declaration of a 2 weeks ceasefire, the Brent crude oil dropped from 110 to 95, if I'm not mistaken. Ganun rin ho ba yung basehan ngayon? I mean, kung gaano kabilis magtaas yung presyo sa pump, do we expect that if we say the replacement cost will be the basis, yung increase ba kahapon na 20 pesos ay may ibabalik ba kaagad ngayong araw na ito, Madam Chair?
Mr. Chair, before it used to be once a month ang adjustment. I'm not sure what the history is. Tapos ginawang everyday. Tapos ngayon naging weekly siya. I think it's para pag 1 month kasi sobrang laki yung jump, and every day magulo, nalilito yung tao. I think that was the explanation before. So now, at the time of Secretary Cusi, if I'm not mistaken, ginawang weekly yung adjustment. So pag compute mo yan, i-average mo from Monday to Friday ang market, and then you get the calculation and the difference, baba or akyat siya, yun yung adjustment pagka Tuesday, Mr. Chair.
And that's why, Madam Chair, though we have this Oil Deregulation Act, it does not tie the hands of the DOE to continue monitoring the stocks, the inventory, and the pump prices. Kasi baka pagdating ng oras, tayo, yung consumers palagi yung lugi. And the oil companies has enjoying this windfall of profit in times of crisis. Salamat, Madam Chair.